Hi, Roger.
Hey, Kathy.
We had a city council meeting last night and I didn't get to sleep until about 3, but I was looking forward to this meeting.
Yeah, it's tough when you have those back to back like that.
Oh,
I'm gonna, I don't know if, let me just check the participants here.
okay.
Oh, Beth is here. Good. Okay. I'll get her on and get her. Hey, Beth. Didn't think you were going to make it, perhaps.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I got to make you make a host. I was going to have somebody else admit people otherwise.
Yes, no, I will.
Good co-host. There you go.
Get you guys
Hey, Rita.
in. Bob. Hi.
Hi, Rita. Are you still teaching? Oh, you're still muted.
You would think that I would know by now. Anyway, yeah, no, I'm retired. I'm fully retired.
Okay.
I'm still
Good.
extracting myself from stuff, though. It's amazing
Yes.
how many things I keep finding I'm still responsible for at the U. Oh, it's amazing. You know, it goes on and on. You know, the obvious things are like human subjects, applications and use of pathogens and toxic substances and ordering sites. It's just like I spent an hour this morning extracting myself from something.
Yeah. It's like
Good
when
luck with that.
when I left the corporate world for security reasons, it's like you're gone. You know,
Yeah, no.
your
At the
email is gone.
university, at the university, it's more like, what else can we get out of you?
Yeah.
So I'm glad
Remember those
everything.
sabbatical years? Got to pay us back for those.
I paid backwards and forwards and upside down for everything. You know, people who think there's an ivory tower are just like, you know, it's as dirty as everywhere else.
Ron Schwartz. Do we have you been on before? I don't recognize your face. Ron?
I think one time.
He's on my list, so he joined us at least last month or the month before.
Oh, okay. And are you in Scio or the city or someplace else?
I'm in Ann Arbor. With the,
Where in Ann Arbor do you live?
On 8th Street.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
The Gelman science polluted spot was my great-grandfather's farm.
Oh.
No kidding. I need to talk to you.
That's really interesting. How long back do you think?
He and his wife and 2 others died in 1896 or 7. And I imagine they had a big family, so I imagine they sold the farm at that time.
It had to be before 1985, because that's when it was discovered. The pollution.
Oh, it was before 65 or 63 when they moved there, right?
Yeah, I think so. Speaking of which, I wonder, Roger, you can make this determination, but I was wondering if I should say something about 2 things. One is, and I'm not sure where to say it. I didn't put it on the agenda, I'm sorry, but one is about Phyllis Engelbert's thesis on the early history of the dioxin contamination. I've been working on trying to help get that become publicly available. And the second is I talked to Shane Morrison at the Eagle about the vapor intrusion, and I could do like just quickie, but it's up to you if you think where that might go.
Well, there's always time at the end for the items that aren't on the agenda.
Mm-hmm. Well, you might remember I asked Dan Hamel about that vapor intrusion inconsistency, and I got clarification on that. That one table
Oh,
said that
okay.
it's not likely to volatilize, and another table has a screening level. So I did get clarity on that.
You might drop it in on item 3C,
Okay,
which is the update from the city on wet basement testing. That looks like the closest for vapor intrusion.
okay, all right, thanks. I'll raise my hand after.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, Ron, we'll have to get together after the holiday sometime, maybe, and talk about the old family farm.
That was Ludwig Vogel.
Oh yeah, I look back at all the plat maps from way back when, 1800s even. I don't know if Vogel showed up back then, probably did, but you'd see, they'd write the last name of who had which plat, which
right.
parcel.
That's right. He owned land on both sides of Wagner Road.
Yeah, and you would see as you compare them year by year, you would see names change, and somebody bought some property for somebody else, or swapped or something like that.
Yes.
You wonder if the houses moved too, if the households moved when that happened.
I don't think they moved the houses.
Not the houses, but the household. Who's living in that house might have.
Oh yeah. Sure.
I'm going to get ready to share. Give everybody a couple more minutes here to get logged in. We've been getting 25 to 30, 35 people every month, which is a lot more than we used to get in the early days when it was only in person. And we're getting, because of that, I think we're getting better input. We're getting more of the tangential information, like what just happened with Ron Swartz there. He said his family used to own the Gelman property. It was a farm before Gelman bought it. So there's some history there. It's a background. See anybody else new on here? Guess I don't know enough about Glenn Hendricks. Glenn, you've been here before, I think, haven't you, or am I mistaken?
Yes, I've been here for a few meetings.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about where do you live and what's your involvement?
I live in Scio Township over the west area Plume. So I'm here as a interested, concerned citizen.
Where exactly? Exactly do you live? Where exactly do you live then?
I live on Little Lake Drive.
Oh, okay, right near where I used to work.
I don't know that.
Yeah, well, I was at Parkland Plaza, right where Little Lake tees into Parkland Plaza. That I forget what the number is of that building that we used to have an office there. In fact, that's where I worked when I first got involved.
Oh, okay. I do have a background in environmental compliance and Superfund and Part 201.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, you're going to be a good resource, I'm sure. What did you do then along those lines?
Well, I'm retired now, but I worked for a large engineering firm and I got involved in a lot of different types of environmental activities. A lot of permitting, a lot of cleanup activities, some Superfund projects, risk assessments, wetlands work, sediment remediation.
Good. Any
35
dioxane
years.
Sites? Any dioxane sites?
No, not usually. That was atypical. Dioxane sometimes is a co-contaminant with trichloroethylene, but other than that, no, I never encountered it.
Yeah, this is a unique site, and the amount of dioxane they used, that wasn't a used as a stabilizer in other industrial solvents.
Correct, that's right. It is unique. I also, I'm originally from Ann Arbor, but I moved away for about 35 years. So I'm back in my
So you live in
hometown,
one
so
of
to
the
speak.
you live in one of the co-housing units?
Yes,
You know, they've been involved since the get-go.
yes, right. Bob Bailey, I believe. But I'm fairly new here too.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We'll be able to use your expertise, hopefully. Well, my screen's almost full, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Wait a minute. What's Joshua says he can't unmute or turn on video.
Yeah, that was me. Sorry. I forgot to hit the accept record button. So I'm good now.
Hi, Josh. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great too. I'm retired.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Joshua,
I'm
you're
not.
not
I've already
retiring
know.
anytime soon, are you?
No. I got 20 more years. So
You know, I have to tell you the stories about the people at DEQ that retired right after they made the right decision.
the right decision to retire, or
Well, like in the permit, I forget which director or assistant or whatever, they made the decision about the limits on dioxane, and right before he retired.
Yeah.
And you know, those are good decisions, but it's sad that somebody had to retire soon after. I mean, it was in order to deal with it, he didn't have to deal with the ramifications when he made that decision within the political structure, if you know what I mean.
I see. I do.
Yeah, so hopefully not retiring anytime soon, although we need your good decisions still. So, all right. So welcome everybody to the December 7th. This is a quarterly CARD meeting, so we have perhaps a few more Eagle people on the screen. As usual, these meetings are being recorded. They will be posted to YouTube, and there will be a transcript automatically created in YouTube. So there's been some concerns raised about if we're going to discuss anything sensitive that may relate to legal issues or strategy, and you want to make a comment about that, but you don't want it as part of the recording, let us know, and we'll either edit it out later or stop the recording and restart it. It's kind of like going into closed session if you're an elected body. So I'll make that disclaimer. So I'm Roger Rail. I'm chair of CARD and chair of Citizens for Safe Water. I'm into my 29th year as a citizen volunteer watching over this site, trying to make sure the right thing happens. And I guess with that, one other thing, we've already introduced a couple people on screen, and I think unlike some recent meetings, I'm going to go ahead and leave all those early chit chat in the video this time for the benefit of people who came in late. This is something one of the disadvantages of having Zoom meetings is we don't have time to really get to know each other before or after meetings. So I'm going to leave that in, and maybe that can be like a standard thing. Schmooze a little bit, I haven't seen so-and-so in person in a while. What's going on with you and your kids or grandkids? That kind of thing. We won't always leave that in the video, but I want to get this to be more of a humane, personal. We're all human beings here. When we have to work with each other and live in the same town and area as each other, and this is how we get things done, is by knowing each other and knowing personalities and knowing who has which kind of expertise that we can draw on. So I'll just make that statement. I'm getting a low system resources warning on my screen right now. So if my audio drops off, hopefully this won't affect the video. I think I'm doing everything in cloud recording at this point. So it should be all right in the cloud. Another reason for having the recording done that way is to fill in any gaps where there's a drop in Zoom resources. So let me share my screen so we can have the agenda up. Share screen. Oh, yeah, I'm going to start off with an item that's not on the agenda, but it needs to be talked about before we forget about it. So let me share the screen. I'll do it this way. There's it is. Share. This should be you should be seeing the agenda now on the screen. Is everybody seeing the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Looks good.
So before we start going through the agenda, I just want to say that I have some scheduling conflicts for the January meeting, and I've already sent out some notices to the CARD board and about 3 options to take care of the January meeting, because I'm coming back from visiting family for the first Christmas since we've had grandkids because of COVID. That same day, I won't be back in time to start the January meeting, and it's close enough to the beginning of the month that I'm thinking that other people are going to have that same issue. So there were 3 options. One is to just cancel the meeting. We've done that in the past, as recently, I think 2017. The other possibility is to postpone it a week, or the third possibility is to have someone else host. Someone who has a paid Zoom account that they can record longer than 40 minutes to host the meeting. And the board has already weighed in and said they didn't have any problem with just canceling the meeting, because usually we don't get much news that early in the month, and there's not a lot going on right now in December, later part of December, so is there anybody that objects to canceling the January meeting and having any new information carry over to the February meeting? If you do, I guess raise your hand on screen, or with the icon lower right of your computer screen, you can make a reaction. And Beth, of course, we can't see everybody at once while I'm sharing my screen, so maybe I should not share right now. Stop the share. Go back to the full screen. Does anybody object to canceling the January meeting?
No.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do, make it easier. And we can still communicate still. I mean, as issues come up in that, and we can discuss it more thoroughly than in February, not have to worry about preparation time and all that. So I'll go back to share. All right, so again, if you want to make a statement, raise your hand either on the screen and or with the icon on the screen, and Beth will try to see that and call on you during any particular topic. And if you're new to the group, or you please introduce yourself at that time. So Beth, you want to take it away with item 2?
Thank you, Roger. And also, if there's anybody that I'm not sending you emails and you're attending right now, please, you can put your email in the chat to me and I'll record it and get you on the email list for next month. There's a couple of names I don't recognize and we do take attendance for voting matters. So if you just have an initial or not a full name and you want to be recorded for attendance. And I don't already have you or know you, just put that in the chat as well. The next item is the approval of the minutes from November. I did do something new where if there are any changes or additions to the minutes from when they were first sent out, I'm putting them in green, highlighting them in green. So there was just like two words that were added, just elaborated on, I believe. So does anybody have any discussion of the minutes or questions before we vote? No? Okay, seeing nobody. All those in favor of approving November minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Nobody opposed, so the minutes are approved. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Oh, Mike, did you have a question or you just raised your hand to approve it? Got it.
Okay. Jack, did you want to take over running the meeting here since Beth's busy admitting people and I'm busy sharing the screens?
I'm certainly available to do that.
Yeah, so starting with the old business.
Alrighty, so let's hop right into the old business. Don't be shy if I don't notice that you've raised your hand. Number 3A, the confidentiality agreement we've discussed repeatedly here, and I'm just wondering if Brian, Dan, or Josh have anything to update us on those items.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Really, actually, the confidentiality agreement can't be touched during the appeal under the appellate rules. To like change it would be impossible. It could only be enforced. For like anybody wants to look it up, I think it's rule 7.208. But separately, what we have done is we have sent out an information request letter under our Part 201 statute, 201-17, to Gelman, asking them to produce the data from the 2016-2017 study time period, is required by the statute, and we'll see what happens when it happens.
A little clarification on that. 2 letters were sent out. One was addressed to Lawrence Gelb, the contact in the CJ order, Gelman contact in the CJ order, and the other letter was sent to Ray Littlewisky, the attorney for Donaher. So 2 letters went out. They were dated, were sent out certified mail, return receipt requested. They went out, or they're dated December 2nd. So I plan to post the letters after we receive the response back that they have been received by the parties. And I'm anticipating getting that this week. So I will post the letters on the webpage and after I get that return confirmation that they were received.
So thank you. I want to emphasize how important this is. We've talked about this at least at the last couple of meetings.
Yep.
Dan, can you give us just a summary of what information has been requested?
Basically it's a general overall request. For example, the identification, nature, quantity of materials that have been generated, treated, stored, handled, or disposed of at the or transported to the facility, the nature and extent of release of threat and release of information. The general statement in these types of letters to any facility, not just Gelman specific. But then we also went into some specific data requests from Gelman. Brian identified that. We specifically asked Gelman and Donaher for information from 2016 and 2017 investigations, which we knew, which we have known have been conducted. So that is a specific request. In that request is data documents containing information related to soil, groundwater, surface water, geology, hydrogeology. We also asked for boring logs, the logs from other Waterloo APS boring logs, maps, and the XY information, of the sample locations and the maps. So we've asked specifically for that information specific to the Gelman site that we know about.
So thank you. I appreciate that description.
Like I said, I will post these letters, the specific letters, on the page as soon as I get acknowledgement back. They went out they started into our system this Thursday, December 2nd. So, we have a system to get things mailed out. Well, it's not an immediate, it has to go through the administrative part of that. So, they may not have gotten mailed out on Thursday, although they were dated that. They may have gotten mailed on Friday. So as soon as I get that acknowledgement back, I will post the letters.
Do you have an expectation of when you'll get a response?
A response about them receiving it, or a response to the specific request?
The actual information that you're requesting.
We have asked them there is a time frame in there, I believe. Let me check here. I believe we've asked them for, within 30 days to give a response back. Please provide, within 30 days, please, of the letter, please provide or provide access to the information. So within 30 days is what we've asked them for. I would, it will be up to them whether they comply with that. And then if there is not compliance, then we will move on our compliance and enforcement. The next step is another type of letter. So we are following the process identified in Part 201-17 to document the request for information. So if it moves on to some type of enforcement, that we have followed the required procedure, and so can move forward with any type of enforcement issue.
Thank you. Mike, you have your hand up?
I do. Since we're not having a January meeting, Dan, if you get a response from them, either including documents or refusal to provide it, can you send us a blanket email?
Yes, I can do
Thank you.
that. What I will probably do, Beth, is send it to like I've done in the past, send it to you so you can send, and you and Roger, so you can send it out to the CARD Corps.
So thank you. Any other discussion on this matter? All righty then. Moving on to 3B, an update on the MS4 violation and work plan. I don't know if Evan Pratt is here. Is Evan here? I don't see Dan Bicknell, so perhaps Dan Hamel could handle that, or somebody else from Eagle.
Well, no, I have the update there. We are still pursuing them. As you know, they had a MS4 work plan that Eagle w.r.t and r.r.t made comments on. Evan made comments on, submitted those comments back to Gelman, and we are, which requested that they update the work plan and then implement the work plan. We are still waiting for that updated work plan, although we have been informally in some communication that they are working on that and plan to resubmit that work plan. I do not have a time frame. Again, that was informal. Whether that actually occurs, we will wait and see.
So can you give me an idea of what the state commented, what flaw they found in the work plan that they wanted addressed?
Oh, you asked me. I didn't grab that stuff. It has been a while. It was the work plan really started with sampling within sampling of for contamination and flow rates within the Allen Creek drain at strategic locations. It did, and then basically identified that if, after evaluation of that, if additional work, for example, if additional sampling outside the pipe was required, then they would proceed with that. We asked them to get a little more. We identified that it's not, you know, if it's required. We are, you know, that w.r.t, Evan, you know, Washtenaw County, Eagle is going to require additional work outside the pipe, even if it is for confirmation. That's the biggest issue that I remember on the work plan. The GSI work plan is posted on the web page. I have to go back and see if things have rolled together for me about posting stuff. I have to see if our comment, the letter, is also posted. But
Okay.
that is the biggest issue that I recall, is that we did not agree with, you know, if the evaluation requires further work, we identified that you will be required to at least do some additional further work with sampling outside the pipe once the locations from this first part of the work plan, once the locations where are identified where groundwater is venting into the pipe is identified.
Thank you. Rita?
My question just has to do with the timing, because it's kind of been a long time since we've heard from Gelman. So is there any way to nudge them to respond? I know
the actual permit holder is, you know, by the MS4 program, which is Washtenaw County, Evan Pratt, is the driver of any, you know, of any, for lack of a better description, enforcement work, you know, enforcement activities. So right now we are being more, you know, we are doing it less down the enforcement pathway and more with requests and identifying requirements under the MS4 program. So
Right.
I can't give when it may be elevated to more enforcement, but you know, I'm not anticipating that as a quick move to enforcement. Again, my opinion, just because of all the other activities that are going on related to the CJ order, related to what they are doing, and that. So, but we are hoping, like I said, with informal communication, we're hoping that we get the work plan back and they at least start those activities, which they've already approved. I mean, they gave us a work plan to do some measurement activities within the pipe. So we're hoping that they will start that here and then again, get that information and move on to any of the other activities required.
All right. Does that answer your question, Rita?
Well, yeah, I guess in terms of being descriptive, I'll just say I feel impatient because I believe that there was a request to respond by October. So I don't know how frequently requests are repeated, but maybe it's time to do that.
Okay. Vince, you have a question?
Yeah, a suggestion that we know that there's 49 parkability at West Park. I think we've done tests upstream and they were non-detect. So I think it's pretty obvious that we need to be doing more testing closer to where we know there is contamination in the Allens Creek. So I would suggest that Eagle encourage Gelman to do testing closer to West Park so we can have a more definitive answer as to where this contamination is coming from and what levels they are outside the pipe. Because we know we're at 49 and maybe you have data from the October test or November test. that would also give us some additional information. Thanks.
Thank you. So Dan, that sort of thing would be addressed in a work plan, right?
Yes, the work plan addresses the current work plan that we have and we made comments on. Addresses is the first step of what you're requesting, Vince, and it does have you know, sampling within the pipe and flow measurements within the pipe in, you know, toward the West Park area. So that has already been identified. Again, requesting that they implement that work plan is what we are currently doing.
So it just seems like starting from a known spot in West Park where we have contamination, working back would have been more effective than just going upstream where we've already done tests and showed non-detect.
Well, it's
It's a pretty steep watershed. So just going a couple blocks upstream, you're going, you know, pretty high up compared to West Park. It's a very steep watershed, and that's part of the problem we're having, is that we have these strata coming out at West Park, and if you go farther upstream, you're going to get farther away from that, what seems to be the bearing, you know, water-bearing layer that's contaminated. Thanks.
So I'm going to admit that I have now looked at the work plan, and so I'm unable to discuss it in any further detail, but we have a month off next month. Maybe I'll go look at that work plan.
Yeah, like I said, the work plan is posted.
Yep. All right, thank you, Dan. Any other comments on 3B? Here we go with 3C, an update on the City of Ann Arbor's wet basement testing. Is Patti here?
Am.
Oh, hi, Patti.
Hi. So last month I had indicated we sampled a home on South 7th Street near Waterworks Park. We got that data back. We used method 522, so it has a lower detection limit. There were no detections in the basement water.
All right. Go ahead, Jim.
I have a question. A friend of mine lives over in the Hollywood area, and they had water in their basement. Sinks to sewers came out and cleaned the drain going out to the street. And they said, we think it's in the sewer system. They went and popped a manhole cover, and there was water in the city sewer system. So is there any chance of dioxane coming from that into the home? Because they had like water backing up from the sewer system into the home.
I mean, if there's, yeah, that's hard to answer. I don't know if 1,4-dioxane's in the sewer. You know, I don't know if it's in contact.
Okay. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Rita?
Thank you. I just wanted to give a very brief summary. I had a conversation with Dr. Shane Morrison, toxicologist for EGLE, and this refers to a question I had asked Dan Hamel a meeting or two ago about some disconnect between a couple of tables that were posted on the EGLE website regarding 1,4-dioxane and vapor intrusion. It was a terrific conversation, and I thank Dr. Morrison for being so helpful. And he explained that we should be referring to the guidance document for the vapor intrusion pathway for current information, specifically values in Appendix D1, Table 1. They are now calling this the volatilization to indoor air pathway, or VIAP screening levels. And Dr. Morrison did the calculations for the VIAP screening levels. But when he calculated the VIAP screening levels, water intrusion, 1,4-dioxane intruding into structures like homes in water was not included in that calculation. So everything, the current screening level is 1,900 parts per billion. It is based solely on intrusion as vapor. So volatilization outside the structure and then moving as vapor into the structure. So this was important clarification because of the two manuscripts that I'm involved in on this Gelman site, which are pretty much done now. So thank you.
Did you want to inform us of those 2 manuscripts?
Oh, sure. I very quickly. So these are 2 manuscripts we were invited to join. It's moving very slowly. There's supposed to be a special issue in a very high ranked journal. The impact factor is huge. It was surprising to me. It's huge. It's like 8 or something or 9. If you're not in the game of academics, that doesn't mean anything to you, but it's like, okay. So, but it's moving pretty slowly, but Bob Bailey is first author on a paper that proposes that volatilization, that water intrusion could be an important pathway for consideration. And then the paper I'm first author on, and several people on this call are co-authors on, is more of a historical overview of the contamination site and where we are now. And but we can't really release them till they're, accepted, but people have been very cooperative and helpful, and we're grateful for that.
Thank you.
So that's a special issue for that journal on 1,4-dioxane, which will give it high exposure as people will search that journal for information.
Yeah,
right?
yes, it was. The special issue is born out of a symposium that Dr. Vasilius Vasilou, who's the chair of the Department of Environmental Health at Yale, he had a symposium on this in the middle of the pandemic in fall 2020. And so this issue is kind of out of that. And so even though I didn't speak at that symposium because I was overwhelmed teaching, he did ask if I and Bob would contribute some papers. So we are.
Great. Thank you so much. Anything else on this item? Moving ahead on the Superfund site designation, is there anyone here from EPA? Is there anyone who can speak on this subject? All right, then we're going to skip that.
Just a second. I would just clarify that the EPA person who would normally be here, who is assigned to this site, was busy with Benton Harbor issues and had a colleague ask if they could sit in on the meeting, and I don't see the name on the screen, so perhaps they got called aside too. So just to let you know that they were planning on being here, but the other water issues intervened apparently. So
yes, already.
Kathy, you had your hand up, I see.
Yes, I talked to Dan Bicknell yesterday, and he has injured his back but expects to recover. And so that's why he's not here today.
All right, moving along. The intervenor update. The parties have filed their briefs with the Court of Appeals. Perhaps someone in this meeting knows whether or not this has been scheduled for oral argument. Is Brian still with us?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute myself.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it has not been scheduled for oral argument yet. And we really kind of have no idea when that may be.
Alrighty. Is there kind of like a time frame, like months plural or weeks plural?
I recall seeing somebody say at one point in time that and the usual sort of schedule is to get them heard within like 12 months before or from when I think it was the appeal was filed. But that this, and I can't remember whether it's from when, or maybe it's from when the appeal was granted. So there might be a couple months difference in that, but the thought is that maybe this might go a little bit sooner because it's an important case. But that's all.
Thank you. I've read the briefs. I don't know that there's anything that really requires remarking. So I'll open it up to anybody else. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, well, I think this item needs to be, in light of what Brian said earlier, about the confidentiality agreement, it's not going to go away until the appeals process is fulfilled, is finished. Gelman is using the courts to delay their releasing of their dioxane in our waters of the state. And I'm glad that the Eagle is taking an alternate path to get that information, but I just want everybody to know that this is the same old Gelman Paul ploy of delay, delay, delay using the courts. And even if it's, even if they lose an appeal, could they still appeal to the Supreme Courts? And does that mean we're not going to get anything publicly shared from their sampling while that goes on? That would be a longer time, it seems to me.
Yeah, I'm fully confident that Gelman will appeal to the Supreme Court if it loses in the Court of Appeals. I'm sure that.
And then what's the time frame for that?
I have no idea.
So we should. Well, let me ask: would the state and the interveners file an appeal if Gelman was successful in the Court of Appeals?
I can't answer that question at this point.
All right. But I don't think anybody in this meeting should be surprised that Gelman will use every means possible to further delay this, including more appeals. So,
I have a question.
go ahead, Eric.
An appeal to the Court of Appeals is by right from the circuit court, but an appeal to the Supreme Court is, in this case, in my understanding, is that it would be by leave of the court. So the court could potentially just deny leave to appeal. Isn't that, am I correct in that?
Let me, yeah, and I forget that I never introduced myself and who I am or whatever, that, for the other folks that don't, have maybe first, new to the meetings, but, I'm the Assistant Attorney General that's assigned to this case. Gelman actually appealed both to the Court of Appeals, both by right and by leave, or as of right and by leave. And what happened was the Court of Appeals rejected their appeal as of right, basically saying that the original case in 1992, when the first consent judgment was entered, that would have been the time to file that appeal as of right. And Gelman, and then the Court of Appeals accepted the by application appeal. And though, once the application is granted, it is treated as of, an appeal as of right, by right. So once it proceeds normally after that, as if, they had a right to the appeal, so. I don't think it makes a huge difference in, what happens further on as far as, if Gelman loses or if Gelman wins, and who decides whether they, take the next step to the Supreme Court.
Righty, any other discussion on this? Let's move forward and hear from Kathy Knol about Scio Township's testing.
Okay, so Scio Township performed residential drinking water well sampling using the 522 method. Back in July, 19 wells were sampled. 3 wells tested positive. 1 on Elizabeth was not a surprise because it had previously tested positive, but there were 2 surprises. 1 well on North Wagner and 1 on Dexter, Ann Arbor, both tested 0.8 parts per billion. And these 2 wells had never previously been sampled. The tests on the 2 wells that had tested positive, the new positive results, were repeated in September. And the dioxane results were confirmed They were also tested for VOCs, which were negative. So Scio is concerned about the area north of M14 because of the spread of the plume potentially in that direction. And we have identified with our expert, Keith Gadway, 15 additional wells to be tested. The tests were done a couple weeks ago, week and a half ago, shipped down to Pace Environmental, again, the 522 method. The lab is in Florida, and we are awaiting these results. We don't know yet what we're going to do with results. We're going to be conferring with the county and with Eagle and formulating a potential plan for the future. Multiple residents are calling the township and requesting the option to perform additional testing with the 522 method in an expanded area. We haven't decided yet how this is going to go forward, but something will be done along these lines, again, after conferring with the county and with Eagle. So one of the sites was approximately 2/3 of a mile north of what had been the estimated northern boundary of the dioxane plume. And this one was a deep well. Roger can talk more specifically about the well, but this one was a surprise to everyone. And as I said before, raises multiple concerns. We also, I want to note, and this might be a potential discussion item with Eagle today or in the future, that there is a proposed development on Dexter Ann Arbor Road, very close to one of the positive test results that was new. And this proposed development is proposing a community well for 47 homes. So the implications of that have yet to be explored, and we are going to want to hear input from Eagle on that issue. So going forward, there are several issues. I have talked to Dan Hamel briefly about the consideration of more testing using the 522 method in areas that are thought to be on the perimeter of the plume. And I'm sure we'll continue discussing that issue. No decisions have been made. So that's basically the update from Scio. I can try to answer questions if anybody has any questions.
Okay, Beth has her hand up.
Well, I'm wondering how far north we're worried about of M14 and where this new boundary is. I have a 1.5-month-old grandson that lives off Pratt. And I mean, I would expect you getting lots of phone calls to do testing, and the county and everyone. So, I mean, I don't know what the next steps are, what Eagle and the county are doing, but is there any updates on, that? And where our boundary is? Do I need to worry about my grandson?
I can offer the information on preliminary boundaries for the testing, but this hasn't been discussed yet with the county. This is what's being proposed by Keith Gadway, our expert, but it would include significant area on Pratt Road. Basically, we have Miller Road to the north and the east as a boundary, the Honey Creek area and part of the Honey Creek tributary to the west and the north, going south. And then Dexter Ann Arbor Road and a little bit south of Dexter Ann Arbor Road as the boundary for the southernmost part of this. But this is all tentative. This is only preliminary. We just had this discussion. So this is not set in stone at all. The Pratt is in there.
So Beth, does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, Jim, go ahead.
I was just curious, is there any place that can do 522 testing that's locally that might be quicker?
Apparently there's a place in Pennsylvania that does it. There is nothing closer to my knowledge. Keith explored this. There are some other labs west, in the western part of the country. Pace Environmental has been doing it for a long time. They're very well established. They have procedures in place that can handle a high volume, and that's why they were chosen. But to my knowledge, there's nothing in the Michigan area. And maybe Dan Hamel can comment on that.
I have the same comment. You know, we looked at 522. The state lab does not have that method, cannot run the dioxane using that method. We have contract or overflow labs, again, that have, you know, I think PACE is one of those that have that capacity, but again, they send it off to specific locations. Just because they have a presence in Michigan does not mean they're doing that work in Michigan. They send it to where they like what happened with Scio Township is PACE is doing it, but their lab that does it is in, did you say Florida or some other location to the west, to the east, and not close to Michigan. And we found those same problems or limitations when we looked into if we wanted to do method 522, what would we have to do? So there's just not a lab right now in Michigan that's doing that method for 1,4-dioxane. Our lab does it with the method 8260 SIM, and the reporting limit, the detection limit is 1 part per billion. The method 522, I believe, is going down to 0.7 parts per billion detection, and that's what was detected with the Scio Township samples. They were in the 0.7, 0.8 range, part per billion range approximately. So our lab would have identified, non-detect, because it would have identified it at down to 1 part per billion.
Thank you very much.
All right, Rita.
I just have a quick question for Kathy. A clarification, when you said that these 15 samples that were drawn and we're waiting for results, are these on the same or different wells? Because you initially sampled 19 wells.
Okay, we sampled 19 wells and then resampled the ones that were positive. The 15 wells that we just did in November are all on new wells.
Great, thank you. Kathy?
The 15 new wells, are some of them at least to the north? Are we attempting to identify the new boundary of the plume?
Yes. Okay. Some of them are to the north, but they expand out from the 2 sites that were positive. So they're not all to the north.
Oh, okay. Well, as a non-lawyer and elected official, I'm really concerned about managing the message. It appears that the plume is growing in unexpected ways that we did not predict. You said you were getting calls from residents. I represent the northeast side of Ann Arbor. I have constituents who are very concerned that, to use their term, that this is out of control. And at this point, I really don't know what to tell them because it seems like government has failed. So I hate to be brutally honest, but I'm very, very concerned that no one involved with this, including the lawyers, look competent at this point. And our only hope is getting the EPA in here. Now, I would love to be proven wrong.
Okay.
Well, and there's Roger and Vince have their hands up, but I mean, what we're going to be told is it's way under the 7.2, so people shouldn't be concerned, but that's malarkey. I don't want to drink, I don't want my grandson to drink any dioxane. I mean, 0.00 whatever. I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. And we should be stopping it somehow and making the polluters stop it. And I agree with you, Kathy, we can just hope for the EPA but.
Okay, go ahead, Roger.
Let's see, Mr. Knol, okay. I would just point out that former SRSW chair Patti Benson, she lives down here near the river. She has been talking. The neighbors have been talking to her, and she's been investigating who else has the 522 method and how much it costs. So that's an ongoing issue, and I'd like to think that there was some kind of coordination of sampling for 522 for people that want to do their own samples, because if we start talking about the township paying for sampling of all the wells that might be involved. I'm trying to share are people seeing the Google Earth screen here as I talk?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that happened. So these are all the properties that have wells in Scio Township. And of course, Ann Arbor Township nearby has some of their own too. This would be a lot of wells to sample. And some of them, how would you pick which ones to sample out of this? And of course, most of them are homeowner wells, so the homeowner has to agree to be sampled. If you're a homeowner, would you agree to have your well sampled if you're about to sell your house? Well, if realtors are doing the job, they'd probably insist on that anyway, but which method would they use? And this happens at other sites around the country where I participated in a Zoom session for a community in Minnesota where a nearby landfill had leakage of dioxane that the local authorities weren't telling the people about. And one woman was on and she said, yeah, I just bought this house 2 weeks ago. I had no idea there's 2,000 parts per billion in my well. It's a lot more than 1 part per billion, but this is an issue that elected officials and government leaders need to address very forthwith and not let it linger, because it affects people's lives. And if you're going to be sampled, let's say you have a hit, what's your recourse? If you're far away, you don't have access to city water. What's it going to mean for your neighbors? What's it going to mean for a lot of people's homes are a good portion of their net worth. And it seems that some of the decision makers, especially those in the legislature, who set these, loosened the standards back in the 90s, didn't consider this. They're not really paying attention to the water needs of the state, and it's slowly being corrected. But we have to get in front of this. We can't let this linger on and slowly spread. If this is held up in the courts, we need to fix that. We don't even know what's going on at the core, because the company is able to keep that information secret. So we don't know. We do know that and I'll cover this later, that there's some sampling they must have done in order to place some of their extraction wells where they did. And we don't have access to that data. So I'm going to leave it there and let somebody else talk.
Vince?
I just would like to remind people, and Rita can chime in on this if she would, but EPA's IRIS for 1,4-dioxane and the risk assessment is for 1 in a million is 0.35 part per billion. That's 2013 standard. So we're talking about here low levels, very low levels, but still of real concern. And many states have standards at that level or lower. So we need to make sure that our residents are not being exposed to this. And it's a serious condition, serious situation. So thanks, Rita.
Go ahead, Rita.
Unmute.
Unmute, Rita.
Oh, I guess I was unmuted for a while. It's an increased risk for 1 in a million, increased cancer risk at 0.35 parts per billion, and their screening level for drinking water is 0.46 parts per billion for an increased risk of 1 in a million. That's the EPA. Not really a standard, it's not enforceable, but this is from their health advisory recommendations.
All right, thank you. Michael.
I'll just be quick here. This started with Kathy's initial question, that is Kathy Griswold's question and statement saying it looks like this is out of control. Well, it is out of control. I mean, we shouldn't be trying to give any other message other than we're trying to locate and to force a plan that will help us locate the directions and where the plume currently is and the direction it's moving. And at this point in time, we don't have control, but it's a plan to get control. And that's part of what the petition to EPA is. So I don't think we're going to be able to make any statement for quite some time that it's under control, because it's just plain not.
All righty. Glenn, go ahead.
These are all residential wells, I believe, which is important to know for risk purposes. However, these wells might not be optimally placed or depth or location wise for actually defining the plume. So that's a concern that I have. I'm also concerned that we're doing a fairly intense sampling in this small area of the township, but what about other areas where we're not sampling, where we don't have any information? I'm concerned about that. The plume may be bigger than we know there too.
Right, thank you. Kathy Griswold.
I just want to thank everyone involved. In my comments were not meant to be critical of anyone involved, because I think some of the participants are working very, very hard, and they're trying to compensate for the lack of involvement or the lack of assertive action by our governmental entities. And so maybe we can put this on the agenda for a future meeting, but we can't just keep doing what we're doing and not get control of this. We've got to have a plan to get control of this and bring in the partners that we need. And if that means, again, engaging high-level governmental officials to explain how serious this is. And I know that Congresswoman Debbie Dingell did send an email to the EPA, but there are so many problems in the world today. We've got to keep attention on this one as well.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Knol.
Yes, I wanted to respond to some of Roger's comments. Discussions are underway and there's no plan yet. In terms of the sampling with PACE, they're able to give a group discount if it's not just for individual samples. So if Patti Benson is getting additional information about sampling, I would love to hear it, because we're open to going to another lab. But right now we've been told that PACE has the most experience and they can accommodate the volume that we have proposed. Scio is discussing the consideration of having a town hall on the contamination issues. This would be scheduled after we get the next round of data. So it's all in the works and there's nothing specific right now. But I just want to reiterate that discussions are going on. It's not that we aren't talking about it, and that's the first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie.
So first and foremost, I just want to reiterate everything that Kathy and Mike have said. And Kathy, if you guys end up doing a town hall, I know Debbie would be happy to be there and emphasize everything that you guys are doing, because obviously this testing is having a huge impact. And Debbie has been talking to the EPA and she sent that letter. I think while we're kind of pursuing these pathways, one of the biggest things that she's trying to do right now is continue to push the EPA in their investigation to clearly draw those boundaries and investigate not just where we know the plume is, but where we don't know the plume is, to figure out exactly where we need to be and where we need to be doing the testing and doing the cleanup. So the continuing of these letters and continuing of the testing is just ongoing. So we haven't gotten a full response from the EPA yet in regards to this testing from Scio Township, but as soon as we get that response, I'll make sure to share it with everybody. And then Kathy, when you guys get the response from these most recent 15 tests, I know Debbie would love to hear the results of that so that we can keep filling the EPA in and keep them updated as well.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Thanks.
So Katie, I hope that you'll convey our appreciation to the Congresswoman. We really appreciate all the good work she does on our behalf.
Always.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So for those that don't know me, I'm Josh Mosher, Acting Director for Mediation and Redevelopment Division. So I don't want to take away from any of the importance of this issue or anything, but as you know, citizens and scientists, I hope that we're not excluding all possibilities. You know, to follow up with what you know, Glenn said, you know, are these wells in the right location to define the plume? And you know, because I'd hate to chase something and miss something else, you know. So 1,4-dioxane, you know, are we looking at every possible source? When we look at these things, I know we know Gelman is out there as a source of 1,4-dioxane, you know, where it's located in these, does it make sense? Do we have, like I said, do we have these in the right location? What are the other possible sources? I mean, kind of like PFAS, 1,4-dioxane is in a lot of products. You know, it is more persistent in our environment than just, you know, the Gelman as the source. I mean, it's in commercial products, it's in laundry detergent at parts per million. So I just don't, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from anything, but I just want to make sure that we're looking at all possible scenarios and not just already made the decision that this is the Gelman plume, we have to stop it. It's like our job is to make sure that we're evaluating all possibilities. And so I know we've shared the data with the EPA and looking at that too, and we're doing our own, you know, evaluation. So
thank you for that insight. I would point out that we have watched the plume march north, and it seems like the polluter is not interested in looking. And so I think the value of what Scio and the county are doing is that they're looking, and without regard to whether or not Gelman is interested in finding where the plume is headed. So
no, I get that, and I did not want to detract from that. I mean, I think that work should continue to go on. I just want to make sure that we're not totally just narrow focused on the one thing, because there are other potential sources. And I would hate for us to miss something. I would hate for us to miss something.
Yeah.
But
and I understand that, especially when you're measuring at the low levels that the 522 test does, because that's going to pick up other sources potentially.
Right.
But
just don't
not
wanna
in a
focus in
deep
here.
well.
yeah,
Not,
but
it's
it,
not going to be in a drinking water deep well though. Like I could see it being in the MS4 violation, you know, I mean, that makes sense, but I couldn't see product dioxane being in a, 150-foot well in the ground. Like, how is it going to get there from shampoo?
Yep. Okay. You had your hand up. Is that the comment you wanted to make? Okay. I'm going to move on to Vince.
Do I put my hand down?
Yeah, I think we need to start considering what we can do for homeowners that have contamination and what filters may be available, what other options they have. I think that needs to be discussed and actually vetted out so we're prepared. I would say some of these people may want filtering currently. I mean, I would think, below 0.3 is, or above 0.35 is a concern. Thanks.
The technology doesn't exist.
Yeah. So Jenny, go ahead.
Yep, I was just going to add to what Roger just commented that unfortunately currently there are no residential scale filters approved for 1,4-dioxane at this point.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? We're going to move on to 3G, the Ann Arbor drinking water alternatives. Beth, has there been any development in that area?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 4. I'm going to turn this over to Dan Hamel and let him update us on what EGLE's up to.
Yeah, I had to unmute myself too. Item number 4A relates to the CJ order, the implementation of the CJ order, the June 1st order by the judge. And I can give an update of what has been going on, what Gelman has been doing related to that, those activities required under that order. They have started monitoring well installation. I think I gave an indication of this last month at locations. There's an attachment G under that order that has a map where monitoring wells in the western and eastern area are proposed, will be placed. The map identifies locations using letters. So Gelman has drilled and installed in the western area a monitoring well at location L and location K, which is on West Delhi, location K, and location L is along Park Road. What the process is they drilled a bedrock, they vertically profile, and then they sample, they analyze those vertical profile samplings, groundwater, and then evaluate that, and then they call us. We get a conference call, and we discuss how many monitoring wells, what vertical, what elevations, what depths, and would be at each specific location. So they've installed, for example, in location K on Delhi, a two well cluster, shallow and deep well there. On location L on Park, they've installed a 3-well monitoring well cluster at at shallow, intermediate, and deep. They have just finished up this week. They moved on to location D, which is in the eastern area, but it's just near Lakeview and South Wagner and north of Liberty. And we just had our conference call yesterday, and they did not, at each of these locations, they have not detected dioxane vertically all the way down to bedrock. Again, their limit is the methodology that is identified in the CJ order is 1 part per billion reporting limit. So they had non-detects for all the previous locations, and they have a non-detect down vertically to at location D. In our discussions yesterday, we decided there were 3 water bearing zones, a shallow, intermediate, and deep. So they will be installing 3 monitoring wells there, and shallow, intermediate, and deep. Specifically, for example, the locations, the depths. The shallow one will be approximately 102 feet below ground level. The intermediate is 192 feet below ground level, and the deep one will be 297 feet below ground level. The specific shallow and intermediate are the depths, approximate depths, that are matching up with the residential wells along Lakeview. The majority of the residential wells, which we are currently sampling with Washtenaw County. So there will be a 3-well cluster at that location D. They have also installed test borings along Valley Drive, which will be used to evaluate what is identified in the CJ order as the Rose extraction well, Rose area extraction well. And so they've already installed those test borings, vertically profiled them, taken geologic samples, and will determine that information will determine where and at what depth and what type of screen will be utilized for that Rose extraction well. That extraction well will be installed sometime in the future, in near future here. And that well, it will be plumbed into the existing pipeline, and that contaminated groundwater that is extracted from the Rose well will be transported back to the Gelman facility using that pipeline and existing pipeline, and treated at the Gelman facility and discharged under the current NPDES permit. The next location that they are moving to after location D, after they install these monitoring wells this week, is location N, which is out at the intersection of Honey Creek and Dexter Road. They have access out there, and that is where under the CJ order, a proposed boring / monitoring well cluster is required. So I don't have a time frame, but I would anticipate that they would start mobilizing to that location next week sometime. Other activities that they have completed, they also, under the CJ order, are required to do GSI, groundwater surface water interface evaluations. They submitted, and I updated at previous meeting, they submitted a work plan, a GSI work plan for the western area. The western area would be west of Wagner Road. And we evaluated that work plan and did not approve it at this time. We gave some comments back of some of the requirements that would be, some of the additions that would be needed to get our approval. We are awaiting the response back or the resubmittal of a revised GSI work plan. I had made a promise that I would post that our response. I have not done that. I had some issues, so I'm behind, way behind in posting that information. So I'm anticipating that will be posted to the webpage, as I've made some other, I'm behind in the monthly postings and that. So I'm getting caught up, but you will be, that our response will be available to that. And then we are awaiting them to submit a revised work plan. And once that's approved, then they will implement the GSI work in the western area. They want to do that work in the winter because of just the areas that they have to sample. It's much easier, it's hard access no matter what time of year, but it's much easier access in the winter. So that's what where we're working to. That's really as far as the implement, the CJ order progress report of what they are currently doing. They are making progress with a well installation and the work plan, GSI work plan. We're anticipating will start after the first of the year implementation of some of those investigation activities. Anybody have any questions? As far as what I know, Roger, you had asked about getting information related to the drilling and installation of these monitoring wells. What has happened in the past and what I've told them that I'm expecting is after these activities are, for example, in the western area, the monitoring well installation activities are completed, we will receive a summary report, which will have all the data that was collected, the vertical profiling data, the final boring log, the actual location, the XY locations, and a map. And again, we aren't expecting, or we have not requested they do each individual location as a summary report. We will get a complete summary after the CJ order, and for example, in the western area are completed. And that same summary report again for the eastern area once those activities are completed.
So Dan, since they're gonna, it sounds like you're talked to them and they are willing to share that kind of data for those new wells that are drilled.
Yes. Yep.
So why have we not already gotten information about the sampling done during the drilling of the borehole for TW24 that supposedly was installed 4 years ago?
Roger, that's their choice. I don't have an answer for you. They have chosen
Why
not
would they
to.
skip that well?
They have chosen
Because
not
that
to submit that information. They, I believe, they are, they have gathered that information, in their evaluation of that was done in a confident,
But Dan, it sounds like you think that all their sampling that they're done as part of this work plan is going to be submitted in a report once they're at a certain stage of completion. And because that location was part of the work plan, wouldn't the information for the location of TW24 be part of that report that they're going to send? Why would they skip that well? It sounds like that would be in that report, wouldn't it?
Well, Roger, if you go back and look at the what is required under the CJ order, that work was done prior to that CJ order. So it is, whether it's covered under that, even though they use that well as a extraction well on site that is identified in the current CJ order, the gathering of that information was prior to the requirement to some, of the the actual CJ order. And I believe they are interpreting that as was gathered without the requirement of doing some type of summary. They're using the well and gathered information to make a decision that that well is a good location for an extraction well, but they are not do not have that same interpretation that the CJ order requires data and information collected be submitted to the state at this time.
And you're going to let them get away with that?
Well, Roger, we've already started the process of asking for that additional information. The letters I just identified that we've sent, whether it escalates to some type of enforcement related to the confidentiality agreement under the CJ order, I can't answer that. I can't answer that.
Neither can we.
No, that's where we are.
Maybe Josh can.
Okay, so we've got a couple hands up. Let's go to Kathy Knol.
Okay, I had some questions for you, Dan, specific to, you mentioned the well on close to Honey Creek and Dexter Ann Arbor Road. Are you familiar with the location of the Knights of Columbus site? Do you know where that is on Dexter Ann Arbor Road? Roger, perhaps you could show him. Okay.
Approximately. So, yeah, I know that. Where Honey Creek? Where does Honey Creek cross Dexter? Roger, right there. Okay, so that is the location. That is the location where they have access to a right adjacent to the creek. They have access from a private citizen to install monitoring well, do a test boring and install monitoring well clusters there. So that is the one that is that is in the CJ order. that approximate circle that's there, the hatched circle is the approximate, from the CJ order, from the map, is the somewhere within that location. Then that hatched circle is the required monitoring well related to the CJ order. So they will be moving there. So your question, Kathy, relates to the we will be gathering some information in the vicinity of that, but not immediately adjacent to that, not immediately on the same property. Or, Roger, you're getting a distance there. What is that distance approximately?
Well, it's going to be like a half a mile from where they're putting in a community well. And it's
Again, they're fulfilling what the order,
3/4 of a mile from where
as
we
the
know
judge
there's
said.
dioxane on the other side of it.
Whether additional wells will be installed after this order has been fulfilled, that will be a future evaluation of any data gaps with the current lines of information that we have. We will look at it once we get these wells in and get some sample analysis, some hydrogeologic analysis, groundwater flow analysis using the new information. We will start identifying data gaps, and that the next step would be to request additional information from Gelman.
Roger, I wanted to add, this is only a proposed community well at this time. Nothing is set. And Dan, I wanted to know, how deep is bedrock in this area where the well will be placed? How deep will they go?
Well, this is just from historic information drilling. You're looking at 200, between 250 and 300 feet. But we won't know until they will be vertically profiling all the way down to bedrock. So we will have a specific depth of bedrock. Once the well is done, we will be able to tie that depth of bedrock with existing wells adjacent around the new wells, and also existing wells that have been previously installed, and be able to generate cross sections to predict maybe depth to bedrock in that specific area where they're maybe installing a community well. So,
Your left foot feel a little cold?
pardon me?
You should mute yourself, Rita. I'm trying not to interrupt anybody, but we're going to move on to Josh now.
Yeah, hi. Rogers wanted to try to answer your question about what information were you talking about that you think is missing that should be in this GSI evaluation?
Information on their own parcel for TW24, which is right here north of, between the Pond 3 and the former Pond 2.
Right. So obviously that's included in our current data request, I believe. But also, if they're relying on the information, like you said, to put together a work plan or do their analysis of whether or not they have capture at the GSI and their compliance at the GSI, and we look at that plan or report and think it's critical to those decisions, then my assessment would be that it would fall under the CJ if that information is critical to their compliance with the CJ. So we'll have an opportunity to evaluate that.
Plan. It was part of their work plan, and they went ahead and implemented it ahead of time. And
understood.
Contrary to what EGLE representatives have said since about 2001, when the EGLE representatives claimed that any new wells would be drilled to bedrock, the boring for TW24, as far as we know, was not drilled to bedrock. We don't know if there's any vertical sampling during the boring of TW24 all the way down to bedrock. And yet they chose to screen it at a certain level. And I'm just saying that that's information that should have been completed, should have been shared back in 2017 and wasn't. And my question was, because it's part of the work plan, well, at least will we get it as part of this completion of the the CJ order work plan? And the answer seems to be no, because of a technicality, and that it might have been around the time that they were coming up with the negotiations. So
Yeah.
I just want to point that out. There's just a big gap there, because that's on their site. We don't know how much dioxin at what levels are still there at the core site. There's no other deep wells in that area.
No, I get that. And what I was trying to say was that as part of this process, their deliverables under the work plan will evaluate that. And I'm assuming so, but I don't know the data. If that data is deemed critical to demonstrate they're in compliance with the CJ and the work plan, then we can ask for that. We don't have to approve.
Well, it's much bigger than this work plan. It's their dioxin.
I get that.
And they said, early on, they said there's a laterally extensive clay layer protecting all the underlying aquifer there. Well, apparently not.
Okay, Mike?
There's a lot of excuses being given for why the material is not provided, and one of them, I think, is not relevant. Are you saying, Dan, that that previous to the June order, that Gelman was submitting the data to EGLE and the interveners from TW24?
No, I'm not saying.
Well, if they're not, then it's not part of the confidentiality agreement. That's just it. It wasn't discussed. It wasn't presented. So don't be worrying about that date. If it's relevant now and the request stands, and Josh seems to think that it is relevant, then let's press on it. But the confidentiality agreement is irrelevant to this issue.
Okay. Like I said, the letters we just sent them is requesting that data. So.
And it should surprise none of us that they drag their feet when they get a request. So, Dan, was there anything more that you wanted to cover under number 4?
Well, not 4A. That's if anybody, as far as implementation of the CJ order, that's the current status and the near future activities that will be completed. Then under 4B, if we're moving on to 4B, yes, I do have information on the sampling of early November sampling of the surface water samples. I am behind on posting that information. I sent it off to be posted here. Hopefully it'll be posted by the end of the week, but I have the data. I can summarize the data, the actual data at some of the key locations. Is the Allen Creek Chapin site. The result was 16 parts per billion, which is down from the previous time frame. Let me get on my Access database here and look at Chapin. So I believe it was 18 previously. The big one, Vince, you were asking about the West Park Southwest, where it had the high of 49 part per billion. The current result in November is now 33 parts per billion. Another note is the Allen Creek 8th Street manhole is 2.5 parts per billion in November. And the storm grate, the 8th Street storm grate, which Vince, you had asked us to sample and we have previously done, is currently at 13. All those numbers are below the previous sampling results from October 2020.
So Dan, what weather conditions were you sampling? Was it dry or wet?
It had been dry for several days.
Okay.
So we tried to get out there, after a dry spell. In the beginning of November, it was had been dry, no significant precipitation for several days. One of the things I did want to note during this sampling activity, we did detect, as you will when I posted, we did detect in the West Park Pond, have always sampled the West Park Pond as part of the surface water sampling activities. We did detect some dioxane in there for the first time at less than 1 ppb. It's an estimate. It's 0.95 parts per billion. And then at the third sister lake, we had elevated. We detected it this time at 57 parts per billion, which is a couple of magnitudes higher than had been previously done. So what we've done last Friday, we went back out and we sampled, did some confirmation sampling of the West Park Pond and third sister lake. And so those results were submitted to the lab last Friday. I'm anticipating that we'll have them within a week or two. But those were some of the little anomalies that we didn't expect. During this resampling activities, Gelman requested and we granted, they also split samples with us. So we sent our samples to the lab, our environmental lab, the state environmental lab. Gelman is doing their analysis in their internal lab. So we will have confirmation samples between two different methods. We utilize method 8260 SIM. They used method 1624C for the analysis of dioxane.
So Dan, what was the value at Third Sisters Lake previous?
Just a second here.
Okay.
Let me get that. I didn't write it down.
Okay.
Third Sister Lake. Let me see here. Previous value was in the range of 3 to 4 parts per billion. The last couple of sampling, and it jumped to 57.
Yeah.
Third Sister Lake is an area which is also going to be covered under the GSI work plan in the Western area. So undoubtedly Gelman wanted to split samples. It was a surprise to all of us that it was elevated, and that additional investigation activities will be done because that's a GSI, potential GSI location in the Western area. So we like I said, went out and did confirmation sampling last Friday. We'll see what these results, if it's still elevated in Third Sister Lake and still a positive detection in West Park Pond.
Rita La Caruso.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a very quick point, and I know we've made it before, but the negotiations for the fourth consent judgment only are for 3 wells in the eastern edge of the plume, and yet the eastern edge of the plume has always been identified consistently throughout this pollution as the major movement of the pollution in the groundwater. So, it's coming to the surface, and it would be nice if we were monitoring it before it was at the surface. And the second point is just, the pipes versus the surface water, the groundwater creates a lot of discussion that I think ends up being unproductive. And so it would be really great if we had some more shallow monitoring wells. So thank you.
Yeah, I would say that having drinking water wells and basements as our sentinels for this plume is inappropriate and ill-advised, and we need to change that plan to actually have Gelman and Donaher monitoring this site, and hopefully a cleanup with EPA at some point. Thanks.
Go ahead, Beth.
There is something that the EPA has, I think it was called an IRM, where like a intermediate remedial measures where things are a problem before they are scheduled to come in. And these wells in Scio Township, this MS4, I mean, I could go now, Saginaw Forest higher, maybe possibly with that TW24, huge high readings that maybe have something to do with the lake being higher as well. But I mean, these are all things that when will the EPA look at all these individual things? And does anyone know?
Well, I think that's one of the parts of how unfortunate it is that we don't have an EPA representative here today, but go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, they do have under circuit the ability to ask for interim response actions. But typically that's, after it's listed on the NPL and they're going through the remedial investigation phase, if they find something that requires action, they can require the PRP to take that interim action before the final remedial action. That's the typical process.
Already seeing no further questions, go ahead and proceed, Dan.
Number 4C is an update on LB4 being offline. If you remember one of the last meetings, I identified that they had LB4, their screened, their well failed. They started to get sand and gravel like they've done, have seen recently in some of the other extraction wells. And so they shut LB4 down and identify and started using LB1 which is an adjacent well, but LB1 cannot extract at the required 100 gallons a minute for the evergreen location area. So that's why LB4 was doing the extraction. And so LB1 was just operating at 65 gallons a minute. They have been able to repair LB4. They basically slid another well inside the LB4 extraction well. It's a smaller diameter well, but that LB4 is back online and it is back extracting 100 gallons a minute as required in the CJ order for that area. So they were able to repair it without having to do a replacement. If you remember, earlier this year, they had to do a replacement at LB on Maple Road, LB19. So they had to basically abandon that well and drill another one. They in this particular case, they were able to repair the LB4 in place. So that is back online and they are in compliance with the current CJ order. The next one, I believe we've covered already, summary report from TW24. I do not have a summary report. I have some specific information which I've shared with this group, like the boring log. That's where we found out that, specific the exact date of when it was installed in 2017. But I have no additional information related to when we would be receive any additional information related to the drilling sampling of TW24 back in 2017. Again,
Yeah, Dan, and I just wanted to clarify that, again, this is part of the current information request, but if we may have another avenue to enforce the request if we believe it's relevant to the current work plan that is being done under the order. So I'll circle back with staff after this week and we'll talk about that. If that information is relevant to the work under the order that's currently going on, that it's under our purview, that may be another mechanism for us to ask for it and say we can't approve this work until we have that information. I'm not saying that's the decision. I'm just saying that we'll evaluate that as another mechanism to get that information.
Josh, can I just jump in and ask, is EGLE bothered by the fact that this happened with TW24 without you getting any information about why they chose that location? Does it bother anybody at EGLE that this happened without your knowledge?
I don't know if bother is the right word, but yeah, I mean,
we were concerned. Suddenly it pops up, oh, they got TW24. And then, here's a boring log for it and see the date of 2017. We knew activities had been going on, had been requesting informally getting that information. But, yeah, we would have liked to been able to be part of that decision of the extraction, like we are currently under the CJ order of where to put extraction wells, where to put monitoring wells. So yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
Sure.
and you know, this is not a typical scenario where you have the work, you know, in a consent decree, dictated in a consent decree. It's usually, you know, you have to get your work approved ahead of time and all this stuff by the department, and then they can, you know, but this one's a little different. And then they just, you know, went out and did work, you know, on their own. So it's a little harder for us to enforce things and say you have to get everything approved when it's like, well, it's dictated to us. So no, it makes it a little squirrely. So yeah, we were disappointed, concerned, but again, we did ask for the information. If there's another avenue for us to ask for it based on their current work, we'll evaluate that too. So sounds like there might be. Like, I don't know all the data, so I can't say for sure. Can't speak for that.
Thank you for those.
We'll evaluate it.
We understand the challenges you have under the circumstances, but we're still upset. Just like
No, yeah, as you have the right to be.
All right. Anything more, Dan?
Oh, well, the only, Roger, I'm gonna need a little clarification. Under 4E, the KML and Google Earth data ability to export from Rockworks. Again, we've discussed that in the past. We have not come up with a procedure to do that extraction, a time frame to do that extraction. So we'll be talking about that in-house as we move forward with the update of the Rockworks model using 2021 data. That update we're anticipating to be completed, you know, mostly completed in the first quarter of 2022 once we get the last bit of 2021 data.
Dan, maybe you don't realize that I wasn't asking for something new to be created.
Yeah, we sent you at one time, I think, back maybe, I know I looked at, punched it up the other night where you had asked for the information from our Rockworks model. We've done that one time, sent out an Excel file, you know, with that, and you made some comments on it. We just haven't come up with a procedure of a time frame.
That's not what I'm asking for. That's not what I've been asking for. I'm asking for something that came out of your Rockworks submittal to the court, where they said in the text of that in order to resolve some of the location discrepancies between Eagle's data and other data, that the Rockworks team did a KML export to use as a tool to resolve those location differences. So this KML file already exists. I just wanted a copy of it.
Okay. You're getting, you know, I will go back to the team.
That's all I'm asking. Something that was already paid for by taxpayer money. I'd like a copy of that.
Okay. Again, you're outside my expertise on that, the modeling and the technical side of that, Roger. I'll go back to the team and make sure that question or request is clarified.
Thank you.
That's all I had. Does anybody have any questions?
As always, we appreciate your input, and we look forward to seeing you in February.
The questions I have, of course, I'll cover under my section coming up next, which is, so I'll cover that momentarily.
Go ahead.
Anybody else? Anybody else have questions for Dan before I continue? All right, so we're now going into my updates, which I'll try to breeze through in 10 minutes. First, I have to bring up my notes so I can refer to them. Dan, you're updating. You're behind on updating the data and sharing it with the public and on the website. I understand that. But
I had some health issues
You don't
in
have to answer.
November.
You don't have to answer. It's my
Yep.
time. The last data we have is August. We don't have any of the September data that EGLE sampled for. I do get monthly updates from Gelman directly of their monthly sampling results. And there's been a couple issues with that when they switched to the Excel, the way they save the Excel version for a couple months caused some problems. We couldn't open the file. This latest one in October, I don't know if you noticed, but the way they contract the well names, and they put like well names twice on the same line, that didn't make any sense. And
Yeah, I had
don't know if you,
to adjust to put it into the Access database.
I wondered about that.
They have a new
that
chemist. The chemist that Sue is retiring, and she's not in there a lot. And so there's a new chemist that they have, and I will be working with them I've been working with him to identify, hey, you're sending me stuff that I have to rework to get it, to get it to like previous submittals. So I hope to have that corrected with him.
This is something I'm familiar with, having worked with databases over the years.
Yeah, absolutely, Roger, I know.
And there needs to be continuity in format, in rules. And one of the other things, I don't know if you noticed, is that their codes they use for to qualify different readings, they all used to be uppercase, and suddenly they were lowercase. Like,
yeah,
okay,
I noticed that also.
Again, just little details like that. And over the life of this project, it's going to be important to have some kind of continuity, so we don't have people like you tearing their hair out trying to deal with it. There should be some standards set and adhered to, whether informally or formally. This can't be just done on a sloppy manner. And so I wanted to point that out. You promised me TW29 well log that we'd be posted. I haven't seen that. TW24's Easting value was wrong, and it was coded as being the marshy area, so I think that's been corrected. TW24 had a range of possible well permits pulled. We don't know which well permit was actually associated with TW24. We do know that the well was actually screened deeper than what the well permits were expecting. And then there's some other issues. Like we talked about the KML file we're still waiting for. And you're going to try to get that to me as soon as possible, because we know it exists someplace in the EGLE realm, and somebody has that. You just need to ask for it and share it. I will point out something that you might not know about, in that on the Rockworks map, 495 North Wagner is off by about a half a mile. And that's a deep homeowner well that's relatively new. I don't know that it's been sampled. I don't know if it's part of the Scio sampling. I don't know if it's ever been sampled by the.
What was that address again, Roger?
495 North Wagner. It's right on the corner of Wagner and Dexter, Ann Arbor Road.
Okay.
So I just wanted to point those things out and get them on the record. We can talk off later if you want issues about that. I will want to, I've been asking, I sent an email to Dan Bicknell to, I want to have a complete list of all of his contributions, he said a very big number, a large number of reports that were shared with CARD and CARD Corps and with EGLE that that draw from his experience about where there are problems with this site. And I want to make sure he gets full credit for all those contributions. So I'm a little disappointed, again, that he maybe his back is bothering, so I hope he's well soon, because we need to have those reports in a archive, because I think most people, even those who have been coming to CARD all these years, I don't think they have a good comprehension of the very detailed contributions that Dan Bicknell has made since he's gotten back involved here around 2013. And it's important that we get that documented in a CARD archive. So they have that request out to Dan. Going on to, I am sharing my agenda, right? You're seeing the agenda?
Yes.
Is that right? And I'm working, I've got the agenda hidden because I'm over top of the notes that I'm reading from. Another, in the observation section, I noticed there are flaws in the fourth CJ that are still there. The judge did not take those out. He said there was going to be quarterly meetings to take those out. Things like the Gelman's able to terminate purging when it gets down to 280 parts per billion. And that's just not acceptable. It used to be 85 east of, as of Wagner Road. They pretty much tried to take that 250 to the whole site. And you can imagine the area of 250 being pretty much the whole plume area, being allowed to spread without any purging going on sometime in the future. And that's just not acceptable. And of course, that happened even as the EPA standards were adhered to get semi-adhered to get the cleanup standards from Michigan tightened from 85 to 7.2 parts per billion. So it's not as if EPA loosened the standards, but that's what Michigan did. They, in this settlement in the CJ that still are not being addressed. This 280 parts per billion termination criteria is still a major flaw. And of course, the 522 sampling is another issue. I have on my notes to talk about some goals for 2022 for CARD. And among those are to help EGLE unify their data sets and update the RockWorks model every year. Because right now there are discrepancies between EGLE's official Gelman database and the RockWorks database. And it took money to get and a team of people at EGLE and outside consultants to get the RockWorks model to the state it is. And it's a good start, but there are problems with it. And EGLE, CARD wants to help EGLE fix that and have a good, a better RockWorks model each year. So I want to work towards making that happen. We're going to continue as a goal, review local government records. I started doing this in 2019 and 2020, got interrupted by COVID. But I want to go to each of the local units and see what their infrastructure is like for keeping track of the Gelman problem. It's clear that the lawyering are not getting all the information that's available, and CARD would like to help these local units tighten up their record keeping and who gets to keep which official copies of things that they're responsible for, and how does that get shared with CARD and the other stakeholders. Along those lines, we need to have some discussion about the schema for content. How do you keep track of information on a site this complex? And that will require some thought among all the people who are doing this, you know, to try to coordinate some of the schemas so that we can transfer data back and forth without having to do a lot of work. So that's one thing. And then the two more points I wanted to make is that because of a couple of issues that came up on the side, I'm thinking that we might want to revive the CARD technical meetings. And remember, the technical meetings actually started before CARD was formed. There were technical meetings going on to advise the IPC, the predecessor of CARD. And when CARD formed, we started doing technical meetings, often on the same day as the CARD meeting. But then it got to be clear that, well, we might as well just make it part of the CARD meeting because a lot of the same people are there. And we would do that quarterly, where we would have, that's pretty much how the quarterly meeting started, was having technical people from EGLE come in, or DEQ at the time. And so I'm thinking about doing that, but it might not be as part of the same regular CARD meeting. It might be just to address certain issues, like some of the ones that came up today. So keep that in the back of your minds and let me know if you have any inputs on that idea, to have better guidance from everybody involved and the local experts. Like even on the screen now, we have some local experts that are citizen experts that can contribute to this. And that's important. And finally, the subcommittee to deal with the CARD website kind of overlaps with the data schema idea, that a lot of what's on the SRSW website that gets used by CARD, I want to transfer a lot of that to a CARD website. And, you know, again, it not having the data to back up what's the content, what's on the website, gets back to the schema idea. You know, how do you structure the data schema, and how does that translate to the schema of the website? We haven't had a request out to the people that wanted to volunteer as website review, and they didn't. It was busy this last couple of months, so we haven't gotten any progress on that. So probably in January, we'll probably get back on that. So that's all I have. Any questions?
So thank you, Roger. Seeing no comments or questions, I'm going to move on to the next item, number 6, non-agenda items. Does anybody have anything to add today? Go ahead, Kathy.
I know that we don't have a meeting scheduled in January, but I think it might be helpful to have some type of community event, even by Zoom, that would generate some press coverage and possibly offer some assurances to community members. Because we're the only ones attending these CARD meetings, which are very useful and keep us up to date. But we need a way to communicate to the public. And the only thing in Ann Arbor is the Water Quality Matters newsletter, which really doesn't focus on this issue and covers many water issues. So I don't know how people feel, but given that Katie has mentioned that the Congresswoman would be willing to participate, I think that her involvement might get some other elected officials at higher levels who could then hear what's happening, get an update, and it would be a good way to update the community.
Ready, thank you.
And I guess I would offer to be a part of any subcommittee that could be set up to schedule such an event.
Alrighty. Any further comments? With that, I remind you that our next regular meeting is in February on the 1st. It'll be an evening meeting. I anticipate that Scio Township will have more news regarding well testing, and that should keep us in the public's attention, and perhaps that it will even lead to a public hearing conducted by Scio Township, and that might be constructive as well. So seeing nothing further, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you to everybody who participated today.
Bye, happy
Anybody who
holidays.
Yeah, anybody wants to stay on and ask me questions, I'll be on for a while.
Hey, Roger, I do want to talk to you for a little bit.
Do you want to do it privately?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.
In that case, I'm going to stop the recording.